In this example, we're graphing y equals the tangent of pi over 2x. So let's take a look at the values of a, omega, and b to determine the vertical stretch, period, and if there's been any vertical shift for this function. So a is 1, which means that it just has a normal stretch factor of 1. There's no reflection. Omega is pi over 2, which means we're going to have a change to the period. So our period is going to be pi divided by pi over 2. So that gives us pi times, so multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator, 2 over pi. Those will cancel, and we get a period of 2 units. And then we know that b is 0, so there's been no vertical shift. So if you remember, when graphing the tangent function, we normally graph from negative pi over 2 to positive pi over 2. So it has a period of pi units typically. Half of our period is in the negative direction and half of our period is in the positive direction. Now, because we have a different period here at 2, half of it's going to be on the left and half of it's going to be on the right. So we still take 2 and divide it into quarters because that's where all of our key points are going to happen. So 2 divided by 4 is 1/2. So we're going to go ahead and label the axes with half units. So this is 1/2, 1, 3/2, 2, 5/2, negative 1/2, negative 1, negative 3/2, negative 2, negative 5/2, etc. And then 1, 2, and so on, negative 1, negative 2, 0 here. So half of our cycle is going to be on the left side, half of it's going to be on the right. So that means that our graph is going to go from negative 1 to positive 1. Now we know that the tangent function normally is on either side of its period is bounded by vertical asymptotes. So at negative 1, we're going to have a vertical asymptote. And we're also going to have a vertical asymptote at positive 1 for this function. Halfway in between, our graph hits an x-intercept. So we're going to have an x-intercept at 0. Normally what would have been pi over 4, which is now 1/2, we would hit the positive a value. So same thing here, halfway in between our x-intercept and our vertical asymptote, we're going to hit the positive a value because it has not been reflected. It has a positive a. And then here we're going to hit the opposite of the a value, and so we're going to hit here. And then you just fill in your curve. So that's one cycle of this. And we could continue graphing that. So at 2, we're also going to have an x-intercept. At 3/2, we'll hit the negative a value. 5/2 will hit the positive a value. We'll have another vertical asymptote here at, what is that, at 3. And then this will get graphed like this. So then, and we can continue that in the negative direction as well. And that would be our graph of y equals the tangent of pi over 2x.